The male body. What a wonder of engineering it is. It contains half the genetic information needed to reproduce and continue civilization. It can produce milk but has useless nipples. And it has the uncanny ability to get an erection at the absolute worst of times. Prepare to be fascinated. Number 50. Male fetuses actually get erections while they're in the womb. And while no one can be absolutely sure why it happens, some reports state it's just to keep the thing healthy. Number 49. Men also have a G-spot. You can find it by pressing on your prostate. For reference, that's about 2 inches from the entrance of your anus. Number 48. Men over 50 might start growing breasts. This is due to the anomalous hormone production that happens as we age. Number 47. It differs from man to man, but in general, a healthy guy will ejaculate 40 million sperm in one go. Still, a man could produce anything up to 200 million sperm each time. You heard that right. That's more people than live in most countries. Number 46. According to one study that was published in the U.S. National Institutes of Health, the member of an American male had an average size of 5.1 to 5.5 inches when fully erect. The study didn't mention how it got its volunteers stimulated in order to measure them at their fullest, but it did confirm the sizes were professionally measured, not self-reported, so there was no room for the men to lie. Number 45. Nationality doesn't impact the size of your member. The conclusion in one study consisted of over 15,000 men from across the world was that the average penis size was 5.17 inches. Genetic factors have a much bigger influence according to a paper by the Nature Journal. But does size even matter? Number 44. Studies have shown that if it's a one-night thing, women on average like a larger phallus, with research showing that they prefer a penis around 6.3 inches in length and 4.8 inches around, which, as you know, is larger than the average. But did size correlate with pleasure? We also looked at anecdotal accounts from women, and as you'd expect, every woman had her unique take on the penis. The consensus was that there had to be a balance, not too long and not too short, with one woman saying, "He had these moves that compensated for his size. Small penises aren't bad at all, if the man knows how to use it." Okay, one last thing about your precious product down there. Number 43. We've all heard about growers versus showers, but is there any truth to it? A study by Healthline showed that 26% of men are growers, with the rest being showers. This is because of a person-to-person difference in how much collagen there is in the penis, which is genetic. The amount of collagen might mean you're a grower or a shower. The amount of blood flow may also make a difference. What's hilarious is that at the bottom of the article, Healthline explained how men can measure their penis, from the base of the shaft, of course, but they also gave this important bit of advice: just don't do it in public. Now, a special mention not to the penis, but to the bulge. Number 42. Throughout history, there's been a preference for a smaller penis, but in cultures, a big one was a sign of greater manhood. For example, in Norse mythology, there is a proud reference to a man whose bratwurst is almost as big as a horse's. Alright, now for some fast-fire facts. Number 41. Men typically have darker hair than women, with one reason being their higher levels of melanin. Number 40. The American Academy of Sleep Medicine said around 40% of men are chronic snorers, but only 24% of women habitually make that noise from hell. Number 39. You might have heard that if he has large feet, then his member will be large too, but this is just another myth in a long list of myths when it comes to the penis. Number 38. Semen is not just a load of sperm. According to one scientist's website, it also contains citric acid, free amino acids, fructose, enzymes, phosphorylcholine, prostaglandin, potassium, and zinc. Number 37. Men tend to have a faster metabolism. Due to the fact that they usually have more muscle than women, that means that even if they're just sitting around, they'll be burning more calories. But are men's and women's brains different? Number 36. If you say that men and women have different brains, you run the risk of being accused of neurosexism. We don't want that to happen to us, but we did read some scientific articles that told us that some parts of the brain might be different in the sexes. Some research says because of the different brain structures, men might be better on average at completing spatial and motor tasks. At the same time, though, women might be better at learning languages and expressing emotions. Remember, though, not all scientists agree on this. Number 35. On average, a man might have 3 to 5 erections every night while he's sleeping, and some of the erections might last as long as 30 minutes. This might have nothing to do with a wet dream or the fact that he's just cozied up closer to his lover. It's a natural phenomenon that scientists call nocturnal penile tumescence. We imagine some of you guys out there have on occasions woken up in the morning and felt something very stiff down there. Or perhaps your girlfriend has stood back in shock and said, "Oh dear, whatever could that be in your pajama pocket?" Morning wood is absolutely normal. The reason it happens down there is something called the parasympathetic nervous system. It can be stimulated at night since it doesn't switch off during sleep. But why it happens during the night is something science isn't so sure about. Number 34. If you don't get any stiffies throughout the night, there might be a problem. In fact, one study said 52% of grown men experience some kind of erectile dysfunction, with it happening more when men pass the age of 40. Still, a study published in the Journal of Sexual Medicine said 26% of men under 40 also experience erectile dysfunction. The main culprits are booze and drugs in the short term, but in the longer term, diabetes, high blood pressure, and high cholesterol, Parkinson's disease, multiple sclerosis, obesity, depression, and anxiety can all affect the ability to make the man stand to attention and stay that way for a useful amount of time. Number 33. In a study titled Prevalence of Pubic Hair Grooming-Related Injuries, it was said that 25% of groomers reported an injury, but this study also included female groomers. How bad can the injury be? Number 32. The absolute worst thing we could find related to cutting and shaving injuries down there was something called Fournier gangrene. Simply put, if there really was hell in this world, then this disease would be Satan's proudest achievement. It's described as a necrotic infection of the scrotum or catastrophic gangrene of the penis, and in some cases, it's happened when someone has nicked their scrotum while grooming. Thankfully, it is very rare. Amen to that. Number 31. A gastroenterologist working at Princeton named Anish Sheth wrote an entire book on poo, from what colors mean to how solid they are. He also wrote about something he called poophoria, which is when a person has an orgasm while dropping the kids off at a pool. He said for some people it can be like having a religious experience due to it feeling so good. He said that this kind of stool high is related to the vagus nerve being stimulated, adding the stool high is relatively safe, but can become an addiction for some. Number 30. Did you know that men have thicker skin than women? They do, and it's because of testosterone. In fact, one study showed that on average, men had 10 to 20% thicker skin. This can also be good news to some vain men, because this is one reason why many healthy men don't age as fast as women. How you age, though, is obviously partly determined by your genes and, more importantly, all the environmental factors the skin experiences over the years. Alright, now we'll settle that argument between you and your partner, if you're in a male-female relationship, that is. Number 29. Have you ever been in a room with someone of the opposite sex and one of you was arguing that it's too warm or too cold, but you are wearing similar types of clothes? One reason for that is that men generally are warmer than women. One doctor explained it like this: since women have a lower metabolic rate, they tend to produce less heat than men do, which makes them feel colder. Sometimes the difference is quite startling, with one health website writing, "Some studies have shown that while men feel comfortable in rooms with a thermostat set to 72 degrees, women tend to feel comfortable in rooms with a thermostat set to 77. Now we'll ask the question, what on earth is that thing that some people call man flu? Number 28. According to an article in the British Medical Journey, some scientists believe that man flu is nothing but man whining. The paper said despite the universally high incidence and prevalence of viral respiratory illness, no scientific review has examined whether the term man flu is appropriately defined or just an ingrained pejorative term with no scientific basis. It's a long paper, but the upshot was that a man's antibody response to the flu could be inferior to a woman's. The paper also highlighted the fact that more men end up in the hospital with the flu, and their bout of the sickness on average lasts longer. This is ongoing research, but there is a possibility that the man is not a wimp and might actually be experiencing a higher level of suffering. Now let's talk about man nips. Number 27. Men in theory can produce milk. That's because their bodies make the hormone oxytocin and prolactin, which are responsible for milk production. Men also have milk ducts, so milk can in theory come out. That means that given the right circumstances, a man could breastfeed. In fact, this is something recorded throughout history. Even the Greek philosopher named Aristotle said men could produce milk if they squeezed their breasts enough. Later in the 19th century, a book called Anomalies and Curiosities of Medicine talked about some real-life cases of men giving their own milk to babies, although these cases are not verified. It could, as we say, happen in theory, but a man's hormone levels would have to be through the roof. Number 26. You might also not know that for a time, young males might have female-looking breasts. A researcher interviewed by the Scientific American said, actually, a significant number of boys around the age of puberty do develop breasts, so the tissue is there, but it regresses. It's a condition called gynecomastia and is related to a hormone imbalance. The good news is that things usually balance and the boy breasts go. That's not always the case though. A man named Merle Yost wrote a book about growing up with breasts where he recounted his years of bullying at school and his final jump to get breast reduction surgery at the age of 33. Number 25. In general, men have less body fat than women. It's thought the reason for women having more body fat is an evolutionary adaptation related to them being able to have children. Number 24. A paper published in the U.S. National Institutes of Health had this to say about male and female natural differences. The results showed that the male teeth were consistently larger than the female teeth. But why? Number 23. It's not always the case, but it's thought that it has something to do with men having more dentine in the crowns of their teeth. Dentine is one of the tissues that make up a tooth. The other parts are the enamel, cementum, and pulp. Now, let's try and settle that old age debate on pain thresholds. Do men feel more pain than women? Number 22. You might have heard this before, with people telling you that women have a higher threshold of pain due to the fact that she's evolved to go through childbirth. The thing is, though, pain is subjective, so it's still hard to measure. In studies where men and women have been subjected to the same pain stimuli, it seems men had a higher pain threshold. The study is actually more complicated as it does take into account that culturally men are expected to not express pain. Number 21. You might also have heard that men have fewer ribs than women. That is utter balderdash, although some people might not have the standard 12 pairs of ribs. Number 20. In some studies, it's written that women generally find men with high testosterone levels more attractive. The good news for all you single guys out there is that single men tend to have higher levels than men who are already with a partner. Number 19. A man's testosterone levels might go up and down within a day, but some men do have higher levels in general. There's also something called irritable male syndrome, which could account for men becoming grumpier in old age because their testosterone levels drop. But as you'll now see, men can get very old and still do the business in the bed. Number 18. There's no age limit for men being able to produce sperm and make a baby. In 2010, it was reported that a guy in India named Ramajit Raghav just had a kid. He was 94. He didn't give up either, having another child just 2 years later. When asked about his secret, he told the British media, "I've been a vegetarian all my life, and I credit my stamina and virility to the diet of vegetables and grains. Being a vegetarian is the secret to my strength and good health." He died in 2020, aged 104. Number 17. Still, the American Society for Reproductive Medicine says male sperm is of a higher quality while men are under the age of 40. In fact, sperm donors are usually asked to be under that age. Number 16. This is one reason why when there's an age gap in a male-to-female relationship, the older person is more often the man. Sure, there are lots of other things to take into account, such as the woman liking a settled-down man who's more likely to be faithful, have money, etc. But one simple fact is some men like younger women because a younger woman from an evolutionary perspective can still procreate. Number 15. Going bald might be some men's worst nightmare, but is it really that bad? Many studies have shown that women like bald men. Trust us, when it comes to being attractive, there are many things that come before your hair. Plus, if you're so insecure and lacking in confidence, well, she might think you're too vain or too weak. In one study, it showed 44% of women were attracted to bald men, but those women were aged 35 to 44. Just 19% of women aged 18 to 24 liked bald guys. Some studies have shown that some women perceive bald men as being more dominant, more masculine, and more successful. Number 14. Studies have shown half of all men will show some amount of male pattern baldness by the time they're 50. Usually it's down to genetics and is related to sex hormones called androgens. Number 13. As we said, this usually starts happening as a man matures, but there are some cases of teenagers going bald naturally. The Guardian talked to a guy named Sam Wolfson. He said he was 16 when his hair started thinning, and then by the time he was in his early 20s, he had only some wispy fuzz on top and 2 bushes at the sides. That's a bit sad, so let's talk about orgasms again. Number 12. The male orgasm is different from a woman's. Guys shoot their load and it seems after that someone has taken all the air out of them. They're like a sex doll that's just been burst. Women, though, have longer orgasms and they're often ready to go again right away. Teen males tend to have more forceful ejaculations, so it's in these years when a guy might fire someplace where he never thought he could reach. What usually comes out is 2 to 5 cubic centimeters of sperm. That's enough to fill a teaspoon at 5 cc's. As for how much in one sitting, it depends on many things such as genetics, mood, prior absence from ejaculating, lifestyle, and general health. In terms of how many rounds men can go, young folks could possibly squeeze out 5 sessions, but older people would likely not go that far. Number 11. With the male orgasm, there's something often called the point of no return. This is called ejaculatory inevitability, and it means the semen's already started making its way to the urethra and is about to experience liftoff. At this point, there will be a series of contractions of the penile muscles and the location of the base of the anus. The pelvis might also start the thrust. Those nerves that have caused the contraction send messages to the brain and everything feels good. Number 10. Before all that happens, a man will need to be aroused. Messages are sent from his spinal cord, and this makes his member stiffen. During this period, he might also let out some liquid from his urethra. This is called pre-ejaculatory fluid, and it's there to affect the pH balance in the urethra. This helps the survival of the sperm to come, but it doesn't contain sperm itself. Once the job is done, the male goes through what scientists call a refractory period. It's basically downtime before he's ready to go again. In a young man, it could be just 10 minutes, but in an older guy, it'll usually be hours. Number 9. Your sperm needs your semen, remember the whole bundle, to get to the egg. Without the rest of the ingredients, it wouldn't get very far at all. But if sperm does take off, it can live inside the woman for up to around 5 days. If it lands somewhere it isn't intended, well, it can only live for a few minutes. Number 8. If you're wondering if you could take a look at sperm, you can't. It's about 1/500th of an inch long, which is around 10,000 times smaller than the egg it wants to meet. Under a microscope, the sperm meeting the egg looks like a tiny spacecraft landing on a vast planet. Number 7. When a woman is ovulating, men can actually pick up on that just by smelling her. Ovulation is when a woman's egg is matured and so has been sent off by the ovary and down the fallopian tubes, where it can wait for one of those lucky sperms to make contact. Number 6. Okay, so what would you think if you read this start to the research paper? Individuals in some species prefer mates carrying dissimilar genes at the major histocompatibility complex, MHC, which may function to increase the MHC or overall heterozygosity of progeny. Yep, that's a bit of a mouthful. What the paper is saying is that women can detect dissimilar genes in men, so by choosing them, their offspring might be healthier. We bet you never thought about that as you moved your stool in the pub closer to a woman. But it gets even more complex. Number 5. Talking to CNN, a scientist said that the egg itself might be able to attract the right kind of sperm. He said human eggs release chemicals called chemoattractants, which leave a sort of chemical breadcrumb trail that sperm use to find unfertilized eggs. Now let's move away from sperm. Number 4. Did you know that guys in general see fewer shades of color? We'll let a scientist explain why. She said this is because retinal cones are on the X chromosome, which men only have one of. Men, however, have more testosterone in their visual cortexes, meaning they sense brightness better than women. Number 3. Something you probably thought we would have talked about already is the male nipple. What's the point of it? The reason men have nipples is that when the embryo is forming, males and females are pretty much the same. They share the same blueprint, which is the reason all humans look alike in terms of basic structure. But after around 7 weeks of gestation, the gene of the Y chromosome makes some changes and the testes start to form. It's then that little bundle of blood starts producing testosterone. But that doesn't mean the nipples have to go. What would be the point in losing them? They aren't doing anyone any harm. Number 2. Another thing men might not need is that thing we call foreskin. After all, in some cultures they get rid of it. Is that the right thing to do? In a paper called Vital or Vestigial, the foreskin has its fans and foes. The writer cites some scientists who have called the foreskin the floppy disk of the male anatomy, meaning it is no longer needed. If you think about it, men have very long time ago might have wanted to walk around with the penis hanging out, and that can mean some damage being caused to this Jonah Hill. This is really bad news in evolutionary terms because the only real reason we're here is to make other people, so the foreskin acted as a protective shield. It could also act as a lubricant back then and now. Number 1. This is personal. When the writer was a kid, he kept hearing boys talk about their balls dropping, as if one day those things just went plop and fell down. It never happened, but his balls looked fine as they were. Still, he was concerned. For many kids waiting for their balls to drop, it can be quite worrying if nothing seems to be happening. Actually, there is no sudden drop at all when the child is already grown. Balls don't really drop. They're tight to the body for sure when men are younger, and then when a boy matures and he produces more testosterone, his balls get larger, and it might seem like they're lower at that point. Now, you need to watch Weird Facts About the Female Body, or have a look at this.